started, I believe that that is in the control room, because this is going to be broadcast live on television. Can people understand me enough to do this one? The time is 7:30. I'll call this meeting of the Planning Board to order. This is going to be a public hearing pertaining to changing the zoning for a parcel of land on Lincoln Street that goes between Lincoln Street and Route 24. The reason for the public hearing is in Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5. It reads in part, "No zoning ordinance or bylaw or amendment thereto shall be adopted until after the planning board in a town has held a public hearing thereon, at which interested persons shall be given an opportunity to be heard." And further down it says, "No vote to adopt any such proposal, bylaw, or amendment thereto shall be taken until a report with recommendations by a planning board has been submitted to the town meeting." Now, actually, we're probably legal. At the last time, this particular parcel was rezoned in 2008. It was converted to business. At that time, we had 75 people show up at the public hearing. So with the constraints of COVID-19, we didn't dare to have it in our little conference room where we could accommodate the number of people here in it, but we could not have maintained the 6-foot distancing, and we just don't want to have any problems with it. So the school was gracious enough to set up the gymnasium for us so that we could have our hearing. Also in that, the governor's lockdown mandated that we cannot have more than 25 people at an indoor meeting, nor 50 people at an outdoor meeting. Now, if we were holding this in July, we would have had it out at the gazebo at the town hall, and we could have had somebody selling, brought a food truck in and sold refreshments, and we could have made a party of it. But we were not able to do that. But the town council, Mr. David Gay, looked into the matter. One of the things is a legislative body is exempt from the number mandate. That's why we can have the town meeting. We had a town meeting in here in June, and we had it set up pretty much like we did here, and we were okay because it was a legislative body. He went on to say, that is exempt. That it seemed logical that because the planning board has to make a report to the town meeting, as I just stated in the Mass General Law, that this is part of that legislative body. We cannot have the town meeting without the planning board having a public hearing with the public there, not to do it on Zoom. I know you can, and we've been doing town meetings in town on Zoom, but to have a public hearing on Zoom is very hard because, and anticipating that if we had the 75 people before, how do you run a Zoom hearing and try to let those 75 people, of which a lot of them will want to get up and speak, to allow them to come in and speak on it. It just would have been fiasco. So we have to have a real open meeting, which we have here. So we have done that. So I know on Facebook there was some people questioning whether we could even have a meeting. So I just wanted to get that out. What we're doing is is legal. We have the blessing of town council, and we can proceed. I'm going to start by reading the notice as it has appeared in the Brockton Enterprise on September the 1st and September the 8th. Notice is hereby given pursuant to Mass General Laws 40A, Section 5, and Section 8.3 of the West Bridgewater zoning bylaws. The West Bridgewater Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September the 16th in the Howard School's cafeteria. Let me just stop at that point. The Howard School, they did not feel that they could safely meet the criteria needed for it. So they offered the cafeteria out here, and for some reason, yesterday afternoon, they decided to put us in here. Well, this is a huge room. We could have a couple hundred people and still maintain it in here. Okay, just with that said, that's why it's in a different place. To discuss rezoning land owned by Hasiotis and Sons at West Center and Lincoln Street, shown on Assessors Maps 43, lots 59, 60, 61, and 63, from a business to an industrial zone. Rezoning this parcel will extend the industrial zone southward from West Center Street along the easterly line of Route 24. And copies of the plan are available at the town clerk's office, and it is signed by the West Bridgewater Planning Board. We have, and they will be speaking, the proponent will be speaking later, but the proponent, DeBartolo Development, is proposing to buy this land from the Hasiotis and do a development, which he will tell you about. But we have a written request that was submitted to the selectmen, asking them to put this on the town warrant, on the town meeting warrant. And the town meeting warrant, while I'm on I've got the podium, let me keep going. The town meeting is going to be on September the 21st at 6 o'clock in this room, which is the high school gymnasium. I doubt there'll be any changes to that, not like with us. So it'll be here on Monday, September the 21st, which is just next Monday. It's coming up. And, okay, with that, this is a public hearing. We have some of the public here, and we're glad to have them, because one of the things with a public hearing is the planning board learns, and also the public learns. It gives them a chance to see it, but also the planning board has a chance to see the presentation and get a better understanding of it, so we know what we're voting upon. The proponent will be discussing, will be making his presentation, and I ask everybody to hold off. The public will have an opportunity to speak at a later time, but we'll let the presentation go forth. Try to remember what your questions are, and after the presentation, then there'll be a question time. We have a microphone over here. In fact, this is being broadcast live on the local cable television show, so we'd like you to use the microphone so that somebody listening to this won't just hear a mumble jumbled up thing. With that being said, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Rich Hartline, who is Vice President of DeBartolo Development, who will make a presentation.
Is this on? Good. Thank you guys very much for letting me come and present this project to you for the first time, many of you. With the COVID and all the challenge we have getting together, thanks you and the whole board for hearing us out tonight. I'm Rich Hartline, I'm Vice President of Development, and I'm going to kind of self-do this because we're trying to get it moving the right way with DeBartolo Development. For those of you that don't know my company and the family that I work for, DeBartolo's been in the real estate development business for over 70 years. Some may be familiar with our patriarch who started building regional shopping centers and malls with Melvin Simon back in the 50s. Mr. D, his son, who's our current chairman, you might know from the sporting world. He won 5 Super Bowls with the 49ers, and I'm not a 49ers fan. Quite frankly, I'm a Cardinals fan, and we won 1-0, so I'm pretty happy how the season started off. DeBartolo Development today is a private family development firm that does multifamily projects, industrial projects, mixed-use retail projects, as well as hospitality projects from coast to coast. We've been working towards and doing more industrial, which I'm going to walk you through today's presentation, because we saw the changes over the last 5-10 years in where retailing was going and also what's happening, and we're all seeing it even during COVID. A lot of you are getting these boxes with smiley faces on them. The whole logistical supply chain has been changing right in front of our eyes, not just the last 6 months, for the last 10 years. And industrial zoning is what we're going for, but that word kind of carries some connotations. And we just finished this beautiful project down the street in Bridgewater. These are logistical centers. These are the hubs for whatever's going on and what's relevant in today's world. Not just retail, but pharmaceutical manufacturing, and you name it. A lot of the buildings that were true industrial built in and around Boston and the South Market here, date back to the World War II times, 60s, low ceilings, nothing like this beautiful gym we're in. And things that are going on inside of these boxes today is as varied as the users that are out there, whether it's FedEx or UPS or Pepsi, or like I said, some of these biomedical companies that are moving in to these spaces. These projects and the scale of them as far as these buildings is pretty unique. The building that we just finished down on Elm Street, working with the town of Bridgewater, is in fact the footprint that you're going to see here. So you can really get a full-scale model if you drive down Elm Street and take a look at it. The building that we're contemplating on this site plan is 350,000 square feet. So it dimensionally is over 1,100 feet long and 300 and roughly 30 feet to 300 feet wide. 32-foot clear height space. Most of the modern users and tenants that are going in these industrial buildings that are providing all types of uses and jobs are looking at the volume of the space, not just the footprint. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these being developed throughout the U.S. The project itself, we're purchasing over 70-plus acres from the Hasiotis family. We've been working with our civil engineers, a local civil engineer, Larry Silva with Silva Engineering, who's here. The first thing you look at when you're trying to look at these parcels is what type of wetlands and what type of environmental sensitive areas do we have to deal with to create really the developable area. And we're going to come back to the site plan a few times, so don't feel like that's the last time you're going to see it. But the wetlands and the mitigations, which we are held to and we're not doing any type of variance with, really set up a thoughtful multi-building concept here. So there's only about 50 acres of developable uplands where you could actually do work. And so we placed the 350,000-foot building back off of Lincoln Street, naturally, because there is some wetlands and also to buffer from the traffic and the people who abut the property, as well as there's wetlands that are distancing the project back from the highway, so it's not right up on the highway. And there's natural foliage and trees and all that stuff that is screening. For some of you that were around for the 2008 rezoning to commercial, one thing to make note of is we're purchasing all of the Hasiotis lands, but the lands go all the way back this way, and I know there's some sensitive heron nesting and other areas. That's always going to remain as is. We're not touching any of that acreage as well. The zoning change, the technical reason, and what we're looking for on Monday for the rezoning and tonight for planning board is, and this next slide's a little bit clearer, to take this property from the dimension up on 106, and I think it's, Larry, is it 3,000 feet? I can't really see the number, but 3,000 feet. Thank you, Hugh. And that stops short of those sensitive wetlands to the south, rezoned industrial. One thing that we were successful in getting back in July was an ANRAD approval from your local conservation commissions, which truly locks in and sets the wetland lines and tells us where we can and can't develop in. And again, all of these numbers and nomenclature are really setting up the sensitive areas. There's some smaller sensitive areas here, and then obviously all of this stuff to the back is solid sensitive. So we're not working on any variances. We're not going to do anything but what's required by the state and local conservation commissions as far as development in the area. Why industrial? Why not a shopping center? You know, why not just play with the zoning that's in place? The problem with shopping centers, and our family knows it very well because we've done millions of square feet around the country, they're mostly irrelevant today. There's a lot of unhealthy retailers that you've been reading about. So I guess in a way, thankfully, it wasn't developed into a major shopping center because you could have some problems there today. This slide here really just speaks to what's kind of going on and what's happening and why West Bridgewater is relevant in the whole logistics supply chain story and what's happening in and around Boston. Those of you that know downtown Boston can't believe what Seaport is today, but if you remember what it used to be was warehouse and parking lots. All those warehouses are gone. All those have been displaced. They've been kicked out of downtown, and they're trying to find new homes as well. So just some information about, you know, why Boston, why South Boston. Along with the ANRAD success and the approval that we got, getting that set, Jeff Bandini's here with McMahon and Associates. They're traffic engineers. The key reason that I'm up here today is because I was giving a challenge a couple years ago by a neighbor of mine down in Bridgewater. And he made me aware of this land, but he said, we have a real problem with this roadway, 106. And he said, if you can try to figure out how to fix 106, then we would consider potentially, you know, your development. So without fixing 106, we would never contemplate a development here either, because we don't want, you know, any employees or any trucks trying to make that left turn with white knuckles. And I used to go to Honeydew quite a bit and get some donuts before my meetings over the last few years, and I almost had a few fender benders myself. But once McMahon did the traffic study, and, you know, Jeff's here to speak to any technical things or any specific things on it, we had at least the data of what's happening at that offset intersection with Crescent and all the traffic coming in and out of 106. What we found is if we could realign Lincoln Street with Crescent and make a signalized intersection, which is a big if, and we don't know if that's traffic feasible at the time, but we could probably help fix at least what's happening today regardless of our development. So McMahon did some concept plans, some of them on the boards. We're going to get to one right here. And before I get into the technical on the road improvements, I was talking with leadership from the town and also with the leadership in Bridgewater. And Bridgewater got a fair amount of money for those road improvements, over $5.9 million of road improvements from what's called a MassWorks grant. Dave Gagne and the team at the West Bridgewater submitted on behalf of the town of West Bridgewater to MassWorks on the improvements that you're about to see for a $4 million grant. And, you know, hopefully come November, when they typically award the MassWorks grants, that the funding for the road infrastructure will come completely from the MassWorks. This is the road improvements, and those of you know this well, it's a challenging intersection. We've secured the land from Mr. Dempsey to relocate this road right here over his current house of residency. And basically, by moving the alignment straight forward, we create a four-way intersection signalized that can control the flow of traffic at peak hours, eastbound and westbound. And now you don't have to take a dart out to take your left turn. That wasn't good enough. What I was also told to do is, what can we do to try to widen this artery and make it better? So with McMahon's help, and I'll try not to get too close in this thing, we try to look at all the constraints to the north side of 106 and the south side of 106. Because we control the land at south side of 106, we can play a little bit more with widening this artery, because we have a clogged artery right now. And what we basically have laid out here is a 2-lane each direction as far as we can go towards, this side, not all the way to Market Basket. And then at some point, we're kind of constrained on the on and off ramp of 24. But for simplicity of understanding the road improvements, 4-way intersection, wider two lanes each direction, also with a turn lane. And then the north side currently has some pedestrian. So we challenged ourselves to say, can we add pedestrian sidewalks to the south side? So what we currently have been able to show is a full pedestrian sidewalk, at least on this side. And then as you go back to my site plan, you'll see that we've carried that pedestrian sidewalk down along the project side of Lincoln Street as well. All of this is just going to allow for better functioning back and forth. One thing about the traffic is we looked at both, and in the report that's been submitted to the city or the town, we look at the existing traffic conditions, and they all fail, basically, Ds and Fs, just like school grades. Our project as defined with the intersection, fixed, because they're tethered. Without the intersection getting fixed, there is no project. Okay, all the movements improve. One of the things we were also asked to look at is on industrial, what is your traffic impacts to this roadway system versus the as-approved uses? Right now, under the current uses, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we can have a 400,000 foot commercial project. That's as of right today. That's what was supposed to go in 2008. That would have produced something like 20 times more traffic on a daily than an industrial building. If it was housing, 40B or otherwise, it would be 3.5 to 4 times more traffic on a daily basis. So the as-approved zoning has a higher traffic impact at this intersection with or without the intersection being fixed. So one good thing that we can truly talk to about this is the project should help fix the problem, but also it will limit the amount of impact to the traffic versus the as-approved uses today. Economic benefits, pretty simple, and we have a blow-up of the chart over here, but when I was talking to some of the leadership, I just said, currently there's $89,000 of taxes coming in on the Haciendas land to the town. As improved, we have 2 buildings plus some retail, or at least commercial, up along 106, and I gave some sensitivities based on the tax valuations of things. What we're looking at on a minimum with the taxes in town of West Bridgewater is an increase to somewhere between 600 to 800,000, even $1 million of taxes a year. So pretty significant increase, and a use that nobody's going to be taxing the school system, and there's not going to be any additional plowing or anything else on our property. So, and the rest of the chart was just simply if we had the road improvements fully borne by the city, how quickly that would be paid back. But that's not currently what we're doing. We're going to try to get this MassWorks grant and get everything done. I'll close with, I'm here to answer every question, anything you guys would like me to answer, as well as technical from my team. But you're only good as your word and your last project. So, when I came to the town of Bridgewater, I told them what I was going to do. They told me what they was going to do, and we finished that project. To this point, I've done everything that's been tasked of me to try to figure out how to fix the road, how to lay it out, and I think really at the end of the day, this is the best use for the project. And to be honest, I think I was at the board of selectmen's meeting as well as the finance committee, and other than keeping it the way it is in perpetuity, this is the least impactful and the best economic decision that the town can make. So thank you very much for your time, and you all, send it back to you. I'm going to put the site plan back up just in case.
Okay, I'll start off with the planning board. Does anybody on the planning board have any questions or concerns that they want to express at this time?
Nothing for me.
Okay. At which point we have the public. If you do want to, anybody has any questions, I'd ask that you use the microphone over here and that you introduce yourself. I know who all of you are, but just for the record, introduce yourself, and please keep it to the microphone if anybody has anything that they would like to either a question or a concern or whatever. I just ask that it pertains to this site.
Hi, Neil Conley, 376 Walnut Street. You built the one in Bridgewater. Is that a speculation building, or is that a building that's already going to be occupied?
It is a speculated building, which we do not have a tenant for. Definition is spec.
So is this building going to be the same thing, a speculation building?
It is currently spec. I do not have a tenant build to suit at this point.
So what would you be looking for to go in that building when you find tenants?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What kind of tenants would you be looking for that building?
Well, the type of tenant in the large building, in explaining it, there's two buildings shown, an 80 to 82,000 foot building and a 350,000 foot building. The tenant mix would be different with each one, but the type of tenant would be anywhere from a logistic group, like I mentioned, the FedEx, the UPS, those type of groups. Wayfair's been looking around the corner. I don't have any of these tenants, so I don't want to, by answering by name, I do not have any of these tenants in hand. But there's all types of biomedical groups. We also have a local major retailer that's from here looking for space, as well as we just, on the Elm Street one, just responded to 2 PP&E needs, that there's 2 government contracts out there. So it kind of runs the spectrum. It could be Pepsi, it could be any of those type of groups.
So really, you won't really, regardless of the traffic study, we know what the traffic's up there, and you won't know the traffic study more until you start renting out that building, the big one. I'm not talking the small ones. When you do that big one, it's 300,000 square feet.
350.
I'm a union guy, and I put up those buildings, and I work down the convention center down in South Boston.
Thank you.
But once you divide it, I don't know how you're going to divide up on the inside. It ain't going to be just one occupant. You're going to have more. So the traffic's going to be a lot more regardless, but I'm not going down that road. The people that live up there, and I'm going to wait till Monday. But a couple other questions. If what happens, you're saying to fix that road down there, you're going to get money from the state, $4 million. I think Dave Gagg, you said Dave Gagg.
It's a $4 million request for grant, yes.
Request, but that doesn't guarantee we'll get it.
That's correct.
So if we don't get it, what happens? Are you going to kick in to do the road, or?
I'm going to have to figure out a plan, yes, sir. Because without the road improvement, we can't do our project, and the town won't approve my project.
So if we approve this in September, and they're not going to release the money till November, why can't we just wait till November till we get the money, then you go forward? Because you're putting all this time and effort into it, so you're really not going forward unless you get that road in. Because I know the town's definitely not going to kick into it.
No, I don't want to speak for anybody at the planning board or any review, but they're not going to approve my plans if that road isn't figured out, period. As far as figured out, timing, we have a lot of work, just like the work I've done to date, at risk to try to get this project going. But you're spot on. But I have to get zoning approval, which is left to the town, which I think is fantastic. If I get past that hurdle, I have a ton of things to do concurrent with hopefully getting that funding. I'm not going to do the project just because the funding doesn't come in. We've contemplated different TIF packages, things where I front the money and get payback when I have a tenant, but there's all types of requirements in the state of Massachusetts. I have to have a tenant, so I can't do a speculative TIF. So, you know, that's where we're at today.
So just, I don't want to bore the...
I think these are great questions. And let me answer one thing to you. On the big one, I can answer it on the tenant size. It's maximum 2 tenants. It'll probably be 2 or 1. It's just the way they're physically built. And the uses inside of the square footages are as varied as the cows come home. To your point and question, maybe if you need the technical answer, when all of these traffic studies get built, there's averages on traffic demand, both the small, the medium, and the heavy users. So how these guys do shopping centers versus residential versus industrial, it's a technical requirement, but I don't think they have to wait for a tenant to do an actual traffic study.
All right, so a couple other questions. Are there going to be jobs for the town residents?
100%, 100%.
Are they going to be good paying jobs?
Depending on who goes in there, they've been some of the best and highest growing jobs in the country right now.
Alrighty, and then So this more or less hangs on to see if we get money from the state, more or less. So we can do all we can Monday night at the town meeting, prove of everything if it goes forward. And then if you don't get money to have the state, it's state money, not federal.
It's state. It's a state works grant, Mass Works grant.
So if we don't get money for the state, this is a dead project.
Yeah.
But you're gonna, can I just, I don't, in case I forget, I got a sharp memory now. But if you do buy the property, you own it. And I don't mean to point at you, I apologize.
No, it's
But
fine.
if you own the property, you can't flip the land down the road. So if we give you these concessions so you don't get the road, but somebody else might say, hey, I'll use that property. I can do this with it, that with it. I don't even have to fix the road. And we got all this permitting all done. Here you go. You can have it. You do what you want with it.
Here's and I'm not going to answer this any more than direct. It's approved for a significant amount of use today. If I wanted to do a shopping center, I wouldn't do it without getting that road fixed somehow. And the industrial use to be zoned is the least impactful to any traffic and any impact, but I would not do it if that road wasn't fixed. The guy down the road, the next guy, if it's rezoned industrial, is still got to come through the same thing. You cannot put anything of density on that property, any use, and take that left. You just can't. It's not safe. I think, Hugh, there's over 50-some accidents in the last trailing 12 months there, and that's probably 150 nail biters. The MassWorks grant, the way I understand it, and the town has a consultant that guided them, you get points, and there's a tethered, it's a public-private partnership. Any town in Massachusetts can ask the state to pay for the roads or their potholes, but they have a checklist, and what they're looking for, at least what the governor's team that hands out this money is looking for, is what is this improvement doing to benefit jobs, growth, and the health of the city or town or municipality. So there's a whole grading system. So the fact that there's a project that can't get done without the MassWorks being funded, right? Versus if I'm not zoned before the MassWorks, you guys are just losing points. So there's a relationship there at the end of the day. I didn't create it, but if the town doesn't approve the zoning change, you guys lose points. Doesn't mean you're not going to win the MassWorks. You guys could actually vote my project down and potentially still score points and get money to fix the road without me. You just get more points if there's jobs and there's economic benefits tied to it. So Dave Gagne and all that stuff could get into that more detail. So I don't know what would happen if somebody tried to build a 300,000-foot shopping center that was currently planned tomorrow that didn't have to come in here, and they won't have to build the road, but I'm pretty sure they'd probably have to sit down in front of your leadership and get their plan approved. So I'm pretty sure somebody at the town's going to want to see how that road's going to be addressed. I don't have a bigger feeler that someone later is going to take this zoning and just go build something.
One last question. Bridgewater has town sewage. We don't have sewage, so you'll be able to put a sewage system in there?
Yes, we're doing our own septic system on site. It does limit the sizes of the buildings and the demands on the buildings, but that's the only way to do it. And there's a number of Class A industrial buildings like this. The most recent one I know is in Bellingham. There's a 300,000 and 120,000 footer that was finished 2 years ago. One of them's an Amazon building now. One has 3 or 4 names that you know in it. So, but they're on septic.
And Monday night, you had a handout up there for the board up there. I mean, if you have it Monday night, can we have the same handout so that we can look at the packet you just sent?
There's some printed out. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Neil, if I may, to a couple of your questions, I was letting Rich, say his end of it, but we've looked at this property since probably 2000. We've been looking at it. In fact, McDonald's was looking at going into Dempsey's when they couldn't get the light there. They just took off. We've had different meetings over the years with people looking to do it, and the first thing we tell them, if you've got to have a traffic light there. We've got to address the roadway. And we can't change that. We're not, we cannot, in good faith, allow a huge development down there without this road being fixed up. So this road, and the beauty of this, if we do get the mass grants, we'll have somebody else paying for it, because the town isn't going to pay for it, and it's going to be, could be a hard sell to get somebody to come in to develop it. But putting this thing together where we have a developer who's going to be beneficial, who's going to fit the criteria of the mass grants, where they are bringing jobs in, they are developing, and fixing the road, they all kind of go together. So I kind of got the impression you thought, well, if the road didn't get done, they'd still try to do it. They could try, but I don't think any of the boards in this town would grant it, because it'd be just too much of a mess there. We've got to do this, and the beauty of this is maybe somebody else will pay for it, and that's really the key to it. Is they've done a lot of work to put this whole thing together, and this is our best chance of getting some improvement on 106.
Can I just ask, how much tax revenue will this bring to the town?
Yeah, the chart that's printed out over there shows it in just general terms. It's based on your assessor's assessment of each improvement. But right now, there's about 90,000, 89,000 coming in annually on the fallow land. This would bump up on the minimum, probably in the mid 600,000, up to probably 800,000, as much to $1 million. So kind of 8 to 10 times the current taxes. And initially, we have done TIFs in other parts of the country, and so that was part of the original conversation, was we'll build it, fund it, and then the town, which we're generating tax, will just credit us taxes until it's paid. That's what you'll see in the chart over there. It just kind of was, these are high-level sketches. When we became aware of the Mass Works, now we have an opportunity to be a catalyst for the town to get the funds. If you guys get the funds and approve my project, you'll get the funds and get 100% of the taxes. There's no TIF. So it's kind of a cake and eat it too scenario. And the only reason you had to go in before zoning is they have to have a deadline in August to submit, and then they usually do Mass Works awards right around the election. Everybody's touting how they're spending money. So right around November 3rd, November 10th, the state starts awarding these Mass Works grants. So that's how we started.
Now, you're going to use town water, or you're going to use well water?
Be town water.
Yeah.
Town water.
Town water.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Don Ashton. I live on River Street. I've got a couple questions. You show sidewalks around the area of the changed intersection. Are those sidewalks part of the grant request, or who's paying for those sidewalks?
Yeah, any of the improvements along 106, it's a great question, are going to be part of the Mass Works grants that's currently contemplated, because it's also a state road. There's people like Jeff that would have to design it, go through all the approvals, as well as the town deciding, do they want a bike path, not a bike path? So there's a lot of people that have nothing to do with the developer. All of that work will be in the package, have to be bid state through the state procurement process. As you turn the corner and after, I would say, the alignment of the road that you saw, and I can pull that up, anything else along that would be through the planning and process. So my current site plan, and I'm sorry about everybody's angle, it shows, and we're contemplating, a sidewalk that runs down the contiguous side of the property that we control. Okay, this is all we can kind of play with the clay, with approval from planning later. But all of the improvements on relocating the road, the intersection, and anything along the right-of-way would be controlled by the town vis-a-vis the Mass Works grant, if the Mass Works grant came through.
So you kind of waved down Lincoln Street, are sidewalks going to go all the way down your property?
There was requests or discussions, and I don't want to speak for the town, because I don't think the town's gone through a detailed discussion of what the improvements ultimately will be that are approved. So there's a lot of constraints, as we all know, on 106. Forget about the driving, just physical constraints. We have the biggest one being on the north side, the cemetery.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to get involved in widening that. So what we've looked at throughout the whole thing is where can we go a little wider on the north through the right-of-way access that the town currently has, as well as what can we do on the south side, if that makes sense. But the request in the conversation was, if we do sidewalks in our improvements, would we put pedestrian-sensitive sidewalks along our property? And we said, absolutely. So there is a little bit, these are obviously private homes. We've shown a sidewalk running down the side of our improvements, and we're willing to do that. We've already told them we would. We don't have control of this right-of-way, the town does, but if that was the case, we would definitely put that sidewalk in.
So on Monday, I'm sure the biggest pushback we're going to get is traffic. And right now, from what I see, you're not addressing the worst bottleneck, which is between the new intersection and 24, where we come down from 2 lanes plus the exit ramp to 1 lane. You're still going to be doing that until you get to the intersection.
You're saying this way?
Yeah.
No, what we're doing is there's some point that we haven't been able, we wouldn't design all of this until the state traffic guys get involved, right, Jeff? So it's not that none of this will be widened, we stopped at a point. And the reason the point's here for us, limited vision, is we have an 80-foot, I think it's 80-foot access easement right here, and I didn't do a good job explaining what this whole project does. But one of the things that's really beneficial for this type of use is this easement, and the way we see it is any type of north-south deliveries or workers or trucks that come into the project will immediately come in through this access and won't even hit this intersection. That's just my project. But when you get to what we've designed, it's 2 lanes in each direction with a turn lane, but it's not designed yet. It's a concept, because the state's going to say, I'll make up something, you can't do anything unless it's 250 feet from a parallel axis of a radius. So the state designers work with people like McMahon's to ultimately do what's legal, sight lines and all that stuff. So the improvements could come all the way to here. What we had is a real pinch point right here.
Yeah, the real bottleneck is between 24 and the Shell station. That's where all those 3 lanes come down to 1 lane,
right,
going from west to east.
Right.
Is Shell on board with this, of making another lane there?
I can't speak for Shell, but we've had a lot of contact with the ownership of this property, and they have their own development plans before we ever showed up. We're working with their team right now. They've been coming to the town about an improvement here, so they're willing to invest on a new facility here, not speaking for the gentleman. But they need to know exactly what's going on right here. So at this point right here, they would love to know if the town's going to take 8 feet, 9 feet, 10 feet, whatever, of right-of-way to widen that pinch point that you mentioned. I would say they're more than welcome to try to fix this, because they want to see more people coming in and out too, right? And we're in discussions with them about helping them with a little bit of their land coming into ours to allow their footprint to be the latest state-of-the-art facility that they have.
So maybe this question is for Mr. Hurley. Is somebody from the town working on a plan to widen that whole section of the road, or?
Well, we're working on getting the grant, and then the grant would, at that time, it would be done. At this time, we have not, other than there's a engineering firm retained, which is getting the grants, but that's all until the grants come in. We have not hired anybody. We're not doing anything at this time.
To answer it more clearly, the detailed more detailed drawing that's blown up shows a lot of what you're saying. It does fall off the map to your pinch point. There's a point at which, until you start doing full design drawings, you're not going to be able to work out all the details. But the intent is to widen it as far as the state highway engineers will allow. This is 106. The state has pretty much full control of what happens over here. Going on and designing in-house and then not sitting down with them and really working with where they're going to go first would be kind of a little backwards, because we want, I would say everybody here would want it as wide as humanly possible, as far as humanly possible. The MassWorks grant had to go in by August. So there's the intent, there's a budget. It's not a hard line, every little detail type of thing. If you got $4 million, just using that number, now you can start doing conceptual designs, pricing it, saying, oh my gosh, it's only $2.3 million. Let's keep going. Let's go try to, and there's bridge widths and all these other fun things that happen. The other thing is it doesn't have to stop just generically right here. It could keep going further. It's how the town spends their money and also what the state will require them to do. So, so if you go too far designing it, too far, you'd rather kind of know how much you have to spend, at least the budget.
Okay. I realize you got constraints on what you can say you're able to do, but all I'm saying is Monday, that's what everybody's going to want to hear about. How are you going to fix the traffic? The blue areas you show there, are those drainage ponds, or what are those?
Yeah, these are surface retention and drainage basins. So this is an open detention basins.
Okay.
Here. So, and the wetlands, again, aren't touched. Anything that's developed is not, we're not asking for variances, as I mentioned before, but based on the way the wetlands are on the site, it actually really set up the building nicely to where it's buffered by Lincoln Street with the detention, as well as the existing trees and foliage, and we plan to do heavy screening for discussions with the town.
What kind of impact do you expect to have on your residential neighbors in that area?
Well, from a technical standpoint, we're going to have less than what's currently zoned and what was contemplated in 2008. So just at a light level.
But do you have like 24-hour lighting there, for example, right in the backyard of the people that live next door to you there? Or
again, we would have lighting and safety and security lighting as required, and there's all types of shields and LED straights and stuff like that. Again, this isn't ideal, right? It's not fair, right? I understand, but this is zoned commercial today or business, and what we're contemplating is less impactful than what if somebody just came in under the current zoning and just worked with them and fixed the road. So, I mean, if a shopping center was there, you'd have lights on 24/7. If I built one of our apartment projects, you'd have lights. You'd have light shields, you have other things that help, bleeding. And again, I don't know what highway sounds they get and other things they get, but I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to be everybody quiet and shush and turn the lights off at 8 p.m. I don't want to mislead you. That's not the case.
One of the things we require on a site plan approval is they put together a lighting plan, and with all the lumens, and they can show what it will be. And they're all very good about putting hooded lights. They used to put a light in to just glow up in the sky, but everything now is hooded and directional. They would be directional onto the building and try and not, rather than having a light on the building shining across the parking lot into somebody's house or across the street, they'd be on poles aimed at the building so that the lights would be there adequate for safety for the building, but we're not lighting up the whole neighborhood. And we've had very good results with all the engineers that come in with us. It's pretty much the thing that they do now, and they have no problem doing it. And so to answer your question, there'll probably be some lights, but it isn't going to be any more than needs to be, and it's not going to be a big glow in the sky.
Yeah, and we do a photometric design, every project, and it goes through the same type of approvals, and they tell you how many foot candles of light, and you can't bleed across a property line or anything like that. So, again, I would say you can go down Elm Street and take a look at our 350,000 footer there right now. You can see the night lights and see the bleed, and it's a glow, and it's lit, it's safe, but it's not, you know, baseball ball fields or the racetrack glowing up on the horizon like it's daytime.
Okay. So my last question is, you show 3 sections to your development there. The section that's right along 106, what is that going to be in there?
No, we don't have any detailed plans here. The current zoning is business, right? And you see the businesses that are here currently right now. As this intersection gets redone, whatever future retail that makes sense there, I use the word retail, it could be a doctor's office or pediatric care.
It could be a strip mall, or it could be a McDonald's or something like that?
Definitely, I mean, by right today, it could be whatever, all of those things, whatever's allowed for by current zoning up there. So what we are going for is industrial throughout the whole thing, which does allow a subset of commercial products. But you know, to answer your question, we're not going to put a 32-foot tall industrial building right up on 106. You know, it's going to be something in keeping with what's happening on 106.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think everyone knows me, but Dave Gagnon, Town Administrator. Mr. Ashton, just to answer your direct question, I'm the one in consultation with an engineer that actually wrote the grant for MassWorks. So I want to make sure I give you the best answer that I possibly can. So as currently written, the request is for us to secure enough funds to be able to do double lanes in both directions from Route 24 down to West Street. Ideally, it would be to Market Basket. There's not that far from West Street to Market Basket, but unfortunately, we start to run into a whole bunch of wetlands areas, and it really starts to get narrow. And what's amazing is that from what the engineer has told me, is that it becomes extremely cost prohibitive once they get past West Street. So we would have to make a choice. Do I want to spend more money in widening, say, from Lincoln Street Crescent to Market Basket, or do I want to invest that money and widen from Lincoln Crescent Street to Route 24? And as you said, the pinch point is definitely coming off the highway, and since I do it twice a day, I'm very well aware of it. So that's really the goal. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly how much money we're going to be awarded. We went for the full, as Rich continues to call it, the full kit and caboodle. We went for everything. We may get 80% of that money. We may get 50%. Hopefully we receive 100%. But until we receive the exact dollar amount, we won't know exactly how much we can do. And the second part to that is, and again, in fairness to Rich, because I've dealt with developers for many years of my life, to his credit, he's not just saying what we want to hear. He's actually being honest, but part of that honesty means we can't give straight answers sometimes. Part of our challenge in a small town is that we don't have, for lack of a better term, an engineering slush fund. Many other towns at town meeting will give the Board of Selectmen every single year $25, $50 grand to spend as they need during the course of the year as issues come up. We don't do that here. So in this particular case, the engineering company said, give us $25,000. This was a conversation in August. Give us $25,000. We will survey this up front as part of the grant process, and we can definitively tell you what we can do and what we can't do. We didn't have the $25,000. And I wasn't going to call a town meeting on August 10th to get 25 grand for something that may never even get approved. So we asked the engineer at that point, using GIS and some other technical ability tools, draw something that you think that we can do and that makes sense, and that $4 million will get us. And so we are hoping that we're going to be able to go from 24 down to West Street. But until we get out there and get the survey work done, we're not going to know exactly for sure, especially since, unfortunately, Mass DOT is going to have some input into this process. Now, the fortunate thing is that once we get approved for MassWorks, assuming we do, now that $25,000 comes from MassWorks as opposed to the town of West Bridgewater. So there was some strategy from my standpoint and the Board of Selectmen standpoint that we want to use as much state money versus town money. But unfortunately, it doesn't give us all the answers we want today. But obviously, I think we're all in agreement. that coming from 24 east, keeping it as wide as possible, double lane, is definitely the intent, and that's what we're trying to achieve.
Denise Reyes, 48 Columbus Avenue. I met with Mr. Hartley today, and he was kind enough to give me a tour of the building in Bridgewater, a chance to see the inside and the outside, as well as the retention areas that were built there. And it's a nicely appointed building, so I can see they do quality work. So tonight, I'm here as a resident, and I have a few questions regarding the traffic study. So I think Mr. Biandini, is that correct? Okay, maybe you can help me with that. Clearly, the revamping of the intersection and the widening of the road will alleviate some of the existing traffic issues we have now. Based on your traffic study, presuming certain types of tenants and presuming a certain type of retail tenant in the front, how many more vehicles per minute, per hour, do you think this new construction can withstand without bringing it right back to the current conditions of being a log jam?
Thanks for your question, appreciate it. So the full traffic study included information relative to the amount of trips that would be produced by the development based on the size and the type. And basically what we do is we calculate what those trips would be on a daily and peak hour basis and weigh that against what's already out there in terms of what's on Route 106, what's on Crescent Street, what's on Lincoln Street. So we found that, as Rich even alluded to earlier, that the intersection right now operates at a level of service F. It's very difficult to take a left-hand turn from Lincoln Street onto Route 106 towards Route 24, which a lot of folks do in the morning as they take their commute and even as they travel on Route 106 west towards Mansfield and Easton. So to answer your question directly, the weekday morning would be about 100 extra vehicles, and in the afternoon peak, about 150. Now, to Rich's point, that's very, very relatively low number compared to what could be developed there today, including both retail and residential. So we found that not only just realigning this intersection, and there's a lot with the geometry and everything that goes along with this, but even just signalizing the intersection itself really provides a monumental benefit for those folks that come out of Lincoln Street and Crescent Street, because they have the ability to turn left unconflicted from Route 106 right now, because Route 106 is just constant flow of traffic, as everyone here is surely aware. So being able to allow those folks to turn left really provides a added benefit to that location. So to answer your question again, there's an infinite amount of traffic that could flow through this intersection. Once it's signalized, the operations are just going to get very much improved. So the goal when looking at what we would do with the signalized intersection is, again, try to keep folks away from that pinch point. Because right now, as we say, we want 2 lanes all the way back to Route 24. Say in that scenario, our goal would be to make sure that those 2 lanes, the traffic will constantly flow there. So we looked at signal timing at that intersection, and it looked to be that there was like a lot of capacity available at that location, so that the traffic issue we don't think would be sincerely mitigated by the addition of that traffic signal.
So let me restate what I think you said, is that with the reconfiguration and the signal lighting, you believe this area will be able to handle an additional 100 cars or vehicles weekday mornings, 150 mid-afternoon?
That's what the development itself will generate.
The development itself meaning the construction?
No, meaning the amount of trips that would come out of the development itself would add that amount of trips to that intersection in the peak hour. Now that's only the development itself. Some folks, again, will travel south on Lincoln Street, a very small percentage. Most of the folks will go either west towards Route 104 or east on Route 106. So the amount of traffic that would flow through that intersection, there's a lot of extra capacity that signal will provide. Again, not only from the lanes and the widening, but from the timing of the signal itself. And as Rich even mentioned, a lot of the folks that come from Route 24 would even turn right into the proposed development before they even get to the signal. So a lot of those folks would not even be going through the signal. And with the technology that's available today, the intersection could be optimized to flow so that if there's no vehicles waiting on Route 106, the folks on Lincoln Street and Crescent Street would be able to flow freely and vice versa.
So are you proposing with one warehouse and 2 retail components on 106, it would be 100 additional vehicles in the morning and 150 in the afternoon, or are you proposing that would be with just one warehouse? What configuration of development are you using with these numbers?
I believe that's the full development for the traffic study. The warehousing, as we mentioned before, is a very low generator compared to some of the other uses that we outlined. A residence, only a handful of residences would generate that amount of traffic, and the warehousing is such a large area compared to the number of workers that come to that facility that the ratio of size of the building to workers is not what you would typically see on some of the other developments. It's a very low average rate per square footage is normally the metric that we use.
Okay. So you're saying these aren't the numbers that the development would produce. These are the numbers that the intersection can handle? I'm still confused. Maybe it's me. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's why I'm here.
Difficult here.
That's okay. So the intersection is going to have a lot more capacity once we widen the roadway and signalize the intersection. There's a lot more traffic beyond what the development would generate to make the intersection anywhere close to what it is now. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. On the application to Mass Works, that grant, that application's already in, correct? So, and this project wasn't part of that application, correct?
Me. Jeff wasn't involved in the Mass Works application or
Okay.
anything to do. The engineer that was mentioned by Dave Gagne was another team.
Okay.
The project and what was submitted to the state didn't get into traffic counts and capacities. What it did do is it says, we, the town of West Bridgewater, want to do this much work. We need this much funds. And here, through the checklist, are the benefits of doing the improvement, not just having a better roadway system, but other projects and jobs and benefits. So our project is named as a potential, public-private partnership generating of tax dollars as well as jobs, but it didn't get into structural traffic counts or any of that nature. It's truly a funding request to the state.
Okay. So understanding that application is already in, why again do we need to have the special town meeting on the zoning issue? If the application's already in, how is that meeting going to affect the application?
The way I understand it, and I don't want to put Dave on the spot, but I think he spent more time with your consultant, the town's consultant, that these projects, all the towns that submit for this grant money, not only the amount of dollars they need, but it's what kind of jobs, what kind of, they look for housing, they look for a lot of different points. So you get a point scale. If our project isn't zoned for the project that's generating jobs, then you get 0 points for it. So if the town does vote against rezoning to industrial, then you will lose points in the final tally, and you may or may not get all of it or part of it or none of it. So the reason we're having a zoning board meeting is twofold, is we need to understand as developer, are we going to be able to move forward with planning and all the details that we have to do, or do we need to move on to other investments? So we've been looking, regardless of the Mass Works grant, for direction, but COVID happened and all these other things occurred and town meetings were pushed off. So the September date is simply a September date, and that's the earliest that it could be brought forth based on the selectmen approving it and moving to a special. It's not necessarily got anything to do with MassWorks, but if you don't approve it, then you just don't get points for that. There are other projects on the MassWorks submission by the town that are listed, and Dave can get into those details. So we're just one of them, and we're the largest one.
So do we need to amend that application after town meeting?
I don't, the answer is yes.
Okay, so there's a process by which we'll make an amendment. Okay.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. At this point, I'm going to close the public portion of it, and we have to deliberate and come up with a recommendation for the, to be presented to the town meeting in general. With that being said, I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the town meeting that that the town meeting approve this zoning change.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. I'm going to poll the board so that each one can vote on, we can hear the vote. Mr. Kinahan.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Stetson. Mr. Noyes. And myself, Mr. Hurley, vote aye. The vote is unanimous of the 5-member board. Thank you very much, everybody. And don't forget, Monday night. We voted tonight, Monday night, that the townspeople get a chance. So, and I think we've got a lot of things straightened out. And I wish to thank Mr. Hartline for being patient with us and explaining it all to us. And look forward to seeing everybody Monday night. Thank you very much.